everybody. I hope that you are doing fantastic today, and I hope that this episode brings you a lot of inspiration. Everyone has a story to tell, okay? Everybody has just to get out there and tell everybody your life journey because you never know who you're going to help. Okay, so our next guest, Susan Gold, wrote the book Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. Now, I want to share with you some powerful words that I read in the book that she wrote. I wanted myself to have peace, abundance, compassion, goodness, light, safe, and joy. I did my best to break the cycle of abuse and toxicity in the family. Susan turns the standard paragraph on its head, courageously leading others through her journey of abuse, addiction, and surviving narcissism, all while creating a distinctly empowering personal and professional life. So I know that you will be inspired by her journey. Like I said, everybody has one, but Susan is gracious and sharing the story with us. Let's bring her on. Hello, hello.
Michelle, wow, what an open. You are magical.
It's gotten technology has gotten easier and easier. Whenever I taught social skills for kids with autism, we would do videos, in front of a green screen, and it was very difficult to find footage. Now you get that footage that, you pay monthly for. So it has come so much easier. It's so much, and I tell everybody, you can do it as well. So Susan, let's go ahead and dive into your story. You are so gracious in sharing it because whenever I was reading your book, I just felt like I wanted to come over and hug you. And even, as a little girl and say, you know what, you're going to be okay because you've really, outgrown it and you're shining now. So can you go ahead and tell us where it all started?
Well, I'll try to, Michelle, but I'm so overwhelmed with your generosity and how you produce your podcast episodes. That takes not just heart, but time, focus, finance, amazing energy. So thank you for the
Oh,
messages you are bringing.
you're welcome.
Yeah. I did start out in a very chaotic home, but I have great love and respect for all of my family members who played their roles to an absolute T. I knew something was awry. It just didn't fit, but I didn't know the level and degree until I reached my adulthood and there were some issues happening.
And I can completely understand that because, we are a product of our environment. And a lot of times you don't really know um, that it's different than everybody else's. All right. Because especially if they kept you at home. Now, what I've really found fascinating is that you found dance, you found a lot of exercises to keep you going. It's almost like it was your outlet. And I know that a lot of people do the same thing, but sometimes you can push yourself a little bit too much. But then again, it opened doors for you.
Yeah, my parents were really interested in getting us involved with as many extracurricular activities that we could. They didn't have that in their own childhood, and they wanted to make sure we all had it. And we were a bit like the Kennedys, it was
Oh,
like fighting for competition and for attention and for the scraps of love that were doled out. I had three brothers and a sister, and I was smack dab in the middle of the pack. And there was an amazing dance teacher not far from our town. And my parents got me involved at 3, and I stayed involved. I actually won an arts scholarship in high school that got me out of my house. And I could get some perspective on what I was living within that family system within the 6-week art school. And I was determined to leave as soon as possible. I left the morning after my high school graduation. I was 17. I was terrified, but I had a soft landing with my sister at the beach for the summer before I went to college, where I also was studying dance and had a scholarship.
Oh, wow. And, and when I was reading that, I thought, well, good for you because you really, and, isn't it great that we find people that really help us tune into our gifts so that we can feel good. Now, let me go ahead and bring up your book and then we'll talk more, more in depth about it. But here it is, and it's The Toxic Family and How You Transformed. Now, it does talk about your childhood and about, the abuse that your mother and your father gave you. And, it's so interesting, my dear, because I found it so uplifting that you found forgiveness with your parents. Can you kind of explain how you arrived to that forgiveness?
My parents came from a toxic lineage, and their parents, I'm sure, came from a toxic lineage. So, Michelle, it was hurt and damaged children raising hurt and damaged children. And once I could see that clearly, I had so much more compassion. And call me Southern California hooey. I'm not in Southern California anymore, but it still sticks to me. I believe I was perfectly placed in the middle of that family system. I truly believe all the players played their role in my movie perfectly. All my challengers and my challenges were opportunities for soul evolution if I chose. I feel, why wait to go to heaven for an earthly review? Let's do
Right.
the life review now and get rid of the shame and the guilt. And let's really get to the core, which is love.
And absolutely, that's all that, that helps us shine and really keep going from day to day is because of that love. Now, it's very interesting. I also read that you were very intuitive and telepathically that you could communicate with your mother. Can you tell us about that? That really intrigued me.
Well, Michelle, probably not as much as you, but yes, I was highly intuitive. I am a super empath, meaning I can just feel what's coming off the other person, their emotions, their feelings. That has served me in business more than you know. And I can give you a clear example. But my mother and I were so telepathically connected, and I moved to the opposite side of the country. I had a 3-year period where I could have no communication. I really had to digest our relationship and the dynamic and what had happened, because the physical abuse was most obvious and most overt, not
Mhm.
covert, with my
Right.
mom.
Right.
And she was acting out what had been foisted upon her. And I also believe she was on speed, which
Mhm.
was diet pills at the time prescribed by her doctor. She soothed with food. And I believe she had a mental illness. She was struggling with her demeanor would switch on a dime, and you never knew what was going to come up with her.
Right. Right. And and again, I was reading it and I thought, wow, you found your power even young because you kept saying, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to fulfill that dream. And guess what? You went to New York. And I really didn't even realize that there are groups that really help you if you grew up in a family of if your parents were alcoholic and everything, that you can actually go and get healed or just hear everybody's story. How did that do a lot of did that kind of stepping stone for your healing, or what did that do for you?
I want to go back because I didn't fully answer your question before, and I
Oh, I'm
apologize.
sorry. Yes, yes,
No, it's
absolutely,
not.
answer it.
It's not your fault. I get lost, but the
Yeah.
telepathy kept me cognizant and safe. I could read
Ah,
the adult's mind, and
right.
I verbalized out loud until it got me in trouble. And then I kept it to myself and I compartmentalized. But I always had that vision. I was going to get out. I was going to go to New York. I watched Barbara Walters on my beanbag in my basement on my belly. I wanted to be Barbara Walters. Well, I did get to New York City. I was 19, living in Greenwich Village on a college internship. And then I went immediately after college graduation. I worked in a glittery skyscraper in this
Wow.
glossy entertainment agency, but I wasn't making enough money to pay my bills. So I was a
Yes.
personal exercise trainer on the side, and Barbara Walters became my client. And one morning at 7 a.m., I rang her doorbell and she opened the door. She took one look at me and she said, "Susan, get in here." And Barbara was a girl's girl. Michelle, she would have loved
Oh, wow.
you. And she said, "Okay, what is going on?" She was a great interviewer because she was
Mhm.
highly empathic and intuitive herself. And she got it out of me. I had been sexually harassed in the workplace the day before, and it
Mm.
kicked up so much shame and abuse from my childhood that was unprocessed. And she said, "I'm coming with you this morning, and we're going to confront this gentleman together." And I said, "Thank you, Barbara. I got it." I confronted him. He fired me promptly. I had 2.5 months of cash in the bank. I was newly
Wow.
sober. And I had just extricated myself from an abusive relationship where the man held the purse strings. I'm embarrassed to say, but it was true.
Mhm.
And my first deal in my own company, a talent brokerage firm matching celebrities to brands, was to knock on the door of the factory and convince Andy Warhol to do a commercial for Pontiac that he had no interest in doing.
That is amazing. And I love, yeah, and I'm with you. I love Barbara Walters because she could, when you watch her interviews on TV, she'd make everybody cry. And you know that she knew what questions to ask them to actually help them cry.
Yeah, she was really in touch with her own humanity, and she had walked through fire being the trailblazer she was as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. And especially with women, I mean, getting ahead in that business, I know was difficult back then. I know it is now as well, but I know it was really difficult with where her generation was to really power through it. Okay, so what did you? Now you're in New York with all the glamour, and I mean, just doing amazing. Now, did you get triggered a lot in what was going on in your life? How did you continue to heal yourself?
Well, I asked for help. I saw the
Mm.
flags, the same flags were playing out in my own life as I had seen in my family dynamic. I was lying when it was just as easy to tell the truth. I was using
Mhm.
alcohol to self soothe and feel equal to. I was
Mhm.
losing track of my goals and my focus. I was in an abusive relationship. I was being abused in the workplace. And I reached out for help. And I don't know how this happened, Michelle, but the therapist immediately said, "How much alcoholism is there in your family?" I didn't know what. Why was he wasting this time? Well, my grandfather on
Mhm.
my father's side died of cirrhosis of the liver. My dad was inebriated almost every
Mhm.
breath. I drink, but it makes me happy. And he
Yeah.
said, "While you're in treatment with me, you're going to put a plug in the jug and you're going to go to meetings and learn about how your father's alcoholism affected
Mhm.
you," which was very clever. And I got sober almost immediately. And I've been sober for decades. And I think that was absolutely the bare minimum, the base platform on that pyramid to begin
Mhm.
the work that I needed to do and wanted to do to evolve fully, to become the human being that I am meant to be. And so I can radiate and help others.
Absolutely. And of course, you are doing that. Now, we do, like you said, you had several people in your life that really they contributed to your life lessons, and that includes your ex husband.
I was
So,
invited to LA, Michelle. I thought it was for a big job, and it was. That job was fantastic, but it was really to meet that guru, that man who would be my ex husband. And he was straight out of the Hollywood movies, persona wise. And he
mhm,
was, because it ultimately was a false construct. He
mhm,
had been raised in a horribly abusive home and didn't have the opportunity of addressing the trauma. He created a false persona instead. And I felt drained. I was exhausted.
mhm.
I was carrying the weight. And finally, to try to keep our marriage together, which I knew was well beyond its expiration date, but I was so terrified, Michelle, to let go. My
Right.
friends told me, "You're so strong, you're so independent, you're so accomplished." I didn't feel that inside, like since second grade. And Billy
Mhm.
Fritz, I had to be attached at the hip at boy attention, or I wasn't whole. Well,
Right.
this man helped me smash that belief. We came to the last point in mediation. I was trying to create a post nuptial agreement to bring integrity, fiscal integrity to the relationship. And
Mhm.
that's when his eyes went into those cold lizard like slits and he folded his arms and he said, I'm hiring an attorney and I'm filing for divorce. And I heard clear as day over my right shoulder that voice came in that said, this is the
Mhm.
universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. And the metaphor for the relationship, this is excruciating, but I need to share that he took up residence in the master bedroom of,
Mhm.
and I, by choice, was on a mattress on the floor in a partial conversion in our garage for the calendar year it took to come to an agreement for me to write his 6-figure check and for him to move on. And I can't really call that a year of living in a home. It was more a domicile. And this was a home that I had purchased for our family. But that's the billboard, Michelle, it took
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
wake me up. And I turned that little partial conversion in the garage into a little monastery. And I went deep within and I did
Mhm.
somatic work. That means work internal to the pockets of trauma where I was
Mhm.
holding the trauma. And I really explored it and was able to release it. And I shifted at a cellular level. And it felt unjust. It was difficult, probably the hardest walk that I've walked
Mhm.
through. My strength and focus as an endurance athlete, my long time holding silence on long meditation retreats, including
Mhm.
no eye contact, is what got me through. And ultimately, it really brought me to clarity on my power. Now I understand what outsiders were saying. And I have great compassion for myself, not
Mhm.
just my ex husband and the horrendous abuse he is carrying and the need for the false persona and stealing energy from others to prop himself up and
Mhm.
walk through life. That is pain like no other. But I
Mhm.
actually have compassion also for my own walk and what I've been through. And I treat myself much differently today as a result.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you. You say that with such grace. And I think a lot of people that are, living the same life as you had before, and they're just saying, I don't know what to do. I mean, you are just showing the light for everybody. I do have a statement that I saw in your book. Okay. And kind of explain where you were thinking, because it kind of goes right along with what you just talked about. See a murky, dark mist seeping from your heart, exiting through your chest and creeping back to heaven, where it is transformed back to love. So,
Oh,
what,
Michelle, that's the workbook. That for me was like the throwaway. And the publisher
Mhm.
said, that's not a throwaway.
Mm,
That's the door to healing
mhm.
for people that will read your book. And that's actually what's happening. I had so many amazing mentors and garnered so much experience with various exercises. And that's one of the most beautiful exercises that was taught to me and
Yes.
really has led me to peace and to freedom. My heart was so blackened. I used to feel like I had saran wrap around me, even after I was on my own 2 feet and had
Mhm.
experienced healing from addiction, from clinical depression. I still felt apart from and not connected with. And this work ultimately, walking through the fire of that divorce, melted that saran wrap. And I can
Wow.
feel you, Michelle. I can feel you now authentically. And I feel joy. And that is possible for anybody in your audience
Mhm.
listening. And I am walking by you to let you know it is possible and it's all okay.
Abs- Absolutely. Now, I've got to ask one question that just really keeps coming into mind. If you could go back as and to talk to your child, you as a child, what would you say to her?
You're okay. You're safe. You're brave. You're strong. You're treasured. And the angels have you completely. You are walking a magical walk. Just keep going one step at a time, and we're right here with you.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And the child in you, I am hugging and I'm bringing you that loving energy as well. you
I
know,
feel it. I feel it. I so feel it.
well, very good. I know a lot of people are going, can you actually do that online? And I go, yes, energy is energy. You set the intention of healing and you can actually send your energy towards that person. So do you still meditate, and are you still practicing on your energy and your intuition?
It's getting clearer, especially as the energies of Earth are raising and our frequency
Mhm.
is shifting and the vibration is becoming more pure. I am not a taskmaster. When I first learned to meditate, it was on the cushion. It was sitting for a very lengthy, healthy period of time. And each time I'd go to a meditation retreat, our amazing spiritual teacher
Mhm.
and leader would have some other scientific formula to dissect and tease out the strands so we can notice, thoughts and feelings. But I asked him one retreat, what about out here? I feel so much out here beyond my body, just beyond my body. And I think I was talking about the astral or the
Oh yeah.
ethereal.
Right.
And he said, I have no idea what you mean. And that was the last meditation retreat I went on. It wasn't the last time I meditated formally. I only sit on the cushion when I'm drawn from my heart. So much
Mhm.
of it came from my head. You should. And the rules were so rigid and fierce. And now I can watch flowers in my meadow or a butterfly. And that's
Wow.
meditation.
Yes. I totally agree, because I tell people, it's not like sitting in a dark room, closing your eyes, sitting up in a chair. Meditation can mean different for different people, the way that you meditate. And a lot of times, people go out into the forest and they can feel the energy of the trees and of nature. And like what you said, the butterflies, that's what a lot of people need to meditate. And that just kind of helps you get that ego out of your brain that keeps telling you things, like you said, laws and the old things, that belief systems and everything. It gets that out of the way so that you can actually find your true authentic self again. So
Absolutely. And I think that's why I was drawn to Montana and the
oh,
vastness of nature after living in New York City and Los Angeles. That still small voice again came up booming. And I was like, I have no intention of leaving Southern California till my son graduates from college. But here I am, and I understand why.
and I totally agree. And I think people need to find, where the energy is the most happy. Sometimes you have to stay in a place for work or whatever. Just go whenever you can. And like you said, because it's so interesting with my life, I'm always living around water. Not ocean water, more like lake water. And of course, I was a swimmer growing up. I love to be in the water, but it's almost like a part of me that I have to be around water. And everybody else, I'm sure, has their own little unique self. So let me ask you, is there anything that we did not talk about that you want to make sure that we do?
No, I'm just grateful to be here and in the company of your audience. Thank you, Michelle.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're going to absolutely love you, because the one thing, being spiritual awakening, when I tell everybody, when you go through a spiritual awakening, sometimes it's hell because you are having to relive everything. And it's just so that you can embrace who you are, what you've been through, so you can help others. And that's exactly what you are doing. All right. So I'm going to bring up the wheel.
I'm
Okay.
excited.
I know it does. It is kind of like an exciting part of the episode. Okay, let's go ahead and spin it, and it even has sound. Oh, I love it because here we're talking about where you are. It's so interesting how the wheel talking about intuition and spiritual. It always asks questions about something we've talked about. But what is your favorite season and why?
Fall, because there's so much transformation and it's so visible and it's so pristine.
Gosh, I wish I knew what that was all about. I know exactly what you're talking about up north, where you actually see the changing of the leaves and everything are absolutely beautiful. It's almost like a butterfly transitioning as well. My father would take a trip and go up north to New England states up there, and just love during that fall season. And he did until he could not, when he got very ill, he could not do it anymore, but he did it until towards the very end. So thank you for sharing again, and I wish you much luck to continue this journey that you were on. And I know, you're just, look at you, you're just shining and you're just smiling and everything else. So good for you, Susan.
Michelle, thanks for having me today. And again, what you are producing for your audience is just so beautiful and so from your heart and the way that you are living by example. I'm so moved by you. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody. I will see you soon. And thank you for listening. And I appreciate you very much.